Like you discern that movement of the heart that, okay, if God took away this today, are you going to be okay with that, or are you going to throw a tantrum? Your fear will determine what you're attached to. So whatever you're most afraid of losing, that's what you're attached to.
Hey everyone, before we start the show, I've got a big announcement for you. We are launching a new initiative called The Faithful Steward. I'll explain more in a mid-roll ad in this episode, but the TLDR is Catholics who want to invest in other Catholic businesses can sign up, and we will send them deal flow of other Catholic-owned businesses for them to invest in across all types of businesses as well as all types of capital. The link to sign up for the private newsletter is in the show notes, and so is the link to submit your deck if you're seeking funding. Or you can go to catholicinvestors.co, catholicinvestors.co to sign up. Now, this is a private newsletter, so be sure to share it with your other Catholic friends who are investors and builders. You can hear a little bit more about this later on in the episode. We have a mid-roll ad read that explains a little bit more details, but you can also go to catholicinvestors.co to learn a little bit more. All right, enjoy the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Catholic Founders Podcast. I'm your host, Silas Maynor. As you may know, Catholic Founders is on a mission to help Catholics launch and grow their businesses in a way that helps them become saints because of their business rather than in spite of their business. You know, as Catholic entrepreneurs, we are not created to achieve earthly glory. That's not our purpose. We are called to be instruments of God's will in the world, to bring glory to Him. And that's what we're trying to do here on Catholic Founders. Before we start, if you are interested in sponsoring this podcast or the newsletter, please do reach out at admin@catholicfounders.com and we can get started. Okay, guys, I'm going to be very, very upfront with you. This episode is by far the most vulnerable episode that we've had. Usually we aim to talk about successes and wins, but today, while there are wins that we discuss, there are a lot of setbacks and misses that are shared by our guest. Our guest is Nhan Dinh. He's a serial entrepreneur with 9 kids who has been in this life since about 2004, if I remember correctly. And we talk about a lot of things, but there are 2 kind of core topics that I want to call to your attention that we focus on. First is understanding when God is calling you to shut down a business or close a chapter for your business journey, and how it's not a bad thing. It just means that there is a new door for you to walk through. Now, new doesn't always mean shinier with, more rewards on the other side, but it does mean it's new. And I think that this idea of trusting in the journey that God is calling us to is very, very important. It's something that's hard for us to do as people who tend to want a lot of control, but we talk about that a lot. The second is we spend a lot of time dwelling on detachment from the world and openness to facing setbacks and challenges. We always imagine entrepreneurship as being successful and having extra money and the ability to kind of go on vacation and just have nice things in general. And the truth is, that's not what it's about, right? As much as we're told that by the world, that's really not what it's about. And just having that willingness to, as I said before, to follow what path God has for you and to have that detachment. We talk about that a lot. So I'm hoping that you will enjoy this episode, which was, again, the first episode where I was actually kind of worried in the process that I might end up tearing up a little bit. But enjoy this discussion with Nhan Dinh. All right. Welcome to the podcast, Nhan. How you doing today?
I'm feeling great. How about yourself, Silas?
I am loving life. I always joke with people who know me a little bit that I'm from Wisconsin originally, so every time I get to wake up in Tennessee in March and it's like 70 something degrees, it's a wonderful day because right now it is definitely not that warm in Wisconsin.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about connecting with you, and I love the idea of what you're doing with Catholic Founders, and just, we definitely need more Catholic entrepreneurs in the world, and I'm excited to be able to share my experience of 22 plus years as an entrepreneur to help the younger generations and others who are thinking about making the leap or going through it and struggling through it. So all to be glory to God.
100%. Absolutely. You have a really interesting story. We definitely cannot cover everything, but I would like to maybe start with, if you don't mind, just giving us a very kind of high level summary of who you are and what your kind of business is today. But I want you to then tell us, how did your family end up coming to America in the first place? I'd like to hear that story a little bit. And then once we get to that point, then we can dive into the business journey.
Yeah. I mean, I love America. I love being here, and also I'm the immigrant story, right? Immigrants are the ones who tend to start in most businesses. So My family's from Vietnam. I moved here in 92. And before that, after the war, my parents didn't have a lot of business work opportunities. There was, with the U.S. embargo, there wasn't much economic opportunity. And if he wanted to go to college to improve his study, he would have to renounce his faith and join the Communist Party. And so he wasn't willing to do that. So he never went to college. And even my mom, after the war, she never even finished high school. She had to go back and work on the farm to help feed the family with my grandparents who had 7 kids at the time. So we've come from a family of immigrants who struggled, and my dad tried to escape from Vietnam, got thrown in prison, hard labor prison for 8 years for that, and that's another story for another day. But we came over through the U.S. had a political asylum program for those who went to prison for fighting with Americans for more than I think 4 years. My grandfather went to prison for 4 years, so that's why we were able to piggyback on and came to the U.S. And that's kind of the journey of how we got here. And so when we came here with penniless. Pretty much, we stayed at our uncle's house. There was like 15 of us, so over 20 people in one house, a single family house, and we just made do with what we got. And my family all started entrepreneurs because they didn't have a degree or anything like that. So that's kind of been in my genes, my bone for many years.
Yeah. What were some of the first businesses that they started?
So my uncle who sponsored us to come over started a nail salon business, and so most of the aunts and uncles that came over worked there. My dad didn't want to do nail; he tried that and he didn't like it, so he started a lawn mowing business, a lawn care company, which he later sold to another family friend, and they still own it and they still run it for after these many years. So yeah, like that's how they. I mean, as some of us may know, that the Vietnamese community is very big on the nail salon
Yeah.
side.
Yeah, it's definitely a bit of a stereotype, but I
Yeah,
always find it just interesting. Like a lot of people nowadays are doing entrepreneurship because they either don't want to work for somebody else or they're just like, oh, I'm going to get rich. Like I'm just focused on this. But I think that it's oftentimes forgotten that entrepreneurship is really, in many cases, it just comes out of necessity. Like I need to make extra money
yeah.
to provide for my family. And I think that Catholics having big families, which you know a lot about, we need to lean into that as well. We can't just be saying, "Hey, like I'm just gonna sit on the couch and do my thing." We've got big families to provide for us. From here, I would like to understand. And by the way, I'm bouncing around it, but Nan
Yeah,
has
let me let
nine
me
kids.
let
Yeah,
me introduce a little bit about my family since you
yeah,
mentioned I do have 9 kids, ranging in age from 16 all the way down to 1. And so yeah, I do have a big family, and I've come to realize I thought that everybody should, like before when I was young, I thought everybody should be an entrepreneur. But as I discern over the years that it's actually a calling because it requires certain sacrifices that most people are not willing to sacrifice. Like in one of your questions, you talked about that. Like if you're an entrepreneur, I've talked to multiple entrepreneurs, and basically, the odds of a business succeeding is 1 out of 10 succeed in the first 5 years. Let's say 100 business starts, 90% close and 10 survive in the first 5 years, and then the next 5 years the other 9 close, and there's only 1 out of 100 survive in like after 10 years. So the odds of closing a business is very high. So you got to be prepared to go penniless or as an entrepreneur at least a couple times in your life if you're gonna go down that calling.
So when you say that, like, do you think that there's a certain kind of mentality that is it just simply that mentality that, hey, listen, I'm going to go into entrepreneurship and I accept the fact that the potential result could be pennilessness?
Yeah, I mean, I think most people don't think about that, but you know, from my experience with talking with many entrepreneurs, they've had like all the successful ones I've talked to, they've been through that, and they still that's the I think that's what separated them from the other people who just like, okay, I failed and I'm just gonna go get a job and never think of entrepreneurship again. It's like they kept at it, and like they just didn't fit in the mold of the job, the employee. I mean, there's nothing wrong with an employee, but like there's a certain mindset being an entrepreneur and the ups and downs of it.
Do you I mean, I guess, do you think that are you saying that having the idea that, hey, I'm willing to face that future as a possibility is effectively I guess you could say, like, the bar that you have to jump over in order to say, I'm willing to take the risk to
Yes,
have the upside?
yes.
Okay.
That's like, if you're not willing to take that risk, then there are better routes to, like, investing, getting a side job. You can be an entrepreneur, just not like you can do it on a side
Full
gig.
time, yeah.
Yeah, not necessarily full time. So full
Yeah.
time definitely comes with risk.
How would you integrate kind of the perspective of trust in God in that process? Like it's one thing to say, hey, I want to build a business to make money. I am willing to suffer pennilessness in order to do that. But like what about the component of just saying, hey, if it is a calling, if I'm in trust, if I'm specifically called to do this thing, and I'm still going to give it into God's hands and say, hey, I accept that the result may be failure.
Yeah. So that's a great question. That's like, I love Saint Ignatius' spiritual discernment in that. Is like, are you doing it because you want to glorify yourself? Or are you really like in it to glorify God? Because God will test you. Like, if your heart's not pure, He will test you. And at that point, are you going to be it's still, running to Him to trust? Because if you do, then your faith grows. But if you don't, then it's going to drive you away from God. So that's kind of the discernment process. Is, yes, keep that in the back of your mind. You obviously, you don't want to fail, but you got to be willing to accept that, and you're willing to trust that whatever God comes out of that failure is going to help you become a better version of yourself, but most importantly, grow closer to God and trust in Him more.
Yeah. How do you think one can have the mentality of openness to success while still like pursuing kind of a good outcome? Because I personally could imagine, if somebody thinks I might fail, there's one kind of way you could say that where it's like I could be a failure, but there's also a way that says like I know I'm going to work hard, and if I don't succeed, that's okay. And there's a different way of positioning that, but I always worry that a little bit that if people are too open to failure, that they won't work hard enough to pursue actually having a successful outcome.
But there's two extremes, right? One is sloth, where like you just want to put in bare minimum. That is not the entrepreneur mindset. You're never going to be an entrepreneur if you have that mindset, and like, you'll find out real quick. So the temptation for an entrepreneur who's gotten their DNA is not the sloth side. It's the overworking, over reliance on yourself side. That, like, I've seen in myself, and I've seen in other entrepreneur. So like, you don't need to worry about not working hard enough. You need to worry about whether you're trusting in God and going in the right direction. Does that make sense? Does that answer your
Yeah.
question?
Well, can you talk a little bit more about that over reliance on self perspective? Because I'm assuming whenever you sit down and think about it, you probably intellectually think, no, 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 I trust in God that this is in His hands. But then it's like as you get into the day in and day out, you start to be focused on your own reliance. Like
Right.
how do you personally kind of try to stay grounded in that trust in God that it is like it's not me, it is God.
When things are going well, it's easy to say that I trust in God, right? It's when your things are starting to fall apart, your employees are complaining, everybody's complaining, you're running out of cash, and like your business is about to fail. That's when it's the true faith is tested. And so it's basically, the first is you gotta be grounded in prayer life. Like, you gotta have a strong prayer life. If not, you're gonna struggle with that, in the temptations to blame others and things like that. But what, circling back to what you said, I love that mindset. Like, the mindset have to be shifted as well. That either I succeed or I learn. Like, don't use the word failure,
Mm.
because like there's a lot of, like, basically it's not helpful to the journey. It's basically either I succeed or I learn, and the learning is always from pain. So it's a painful lesson, but it's a learning lesson, and you don't want to lose that learning lesson. But back to the, how do you, that's the tension that Saint Ignatius talks about, or one of the things talked about, right? Pray as if everything depended on God, and work as if everything depended on you. And that tension will definitely be there. And what has kept me sane is when the things go wrong, just like right now we're experiencing, like, I've had to close down my business, the business that I started in 2005, right? It's been 21 years. Like, letting that go and trusting in God's divine providence. Like of course I worried and stuff like that. But I go through that cycle, and I pray the surrender novena. That's been super helpful to me, learning to let go and trust in God's divine providence to provide that no matter what happens, God will take care of us, and He will bring a greater good out of even our failures, our learning lessons.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. Let's focus on that. Let's continue on that. How do you know when it's time to shut a business down? And I guess what is it like? Because you've done this a couple times, right? You've had to shut down a few businesses. So I'd be curious to hear your perspective on how do you know it's time, and how do you kind of go through the process of accepting it and then figuring out what exactly God's calling you to next? And I ask this also from the perspective of not giving up just because it's hard.
Right, right. I don't think, like, if you give up because it's hard, you're not really made for entrepreneurship. That's my opinion of that situation. Really, the problem with the entrepreneur is not that they give up; it's just that they give up too late. So one of the books that really helped me with this is called Necessary Endings by Dr. Henry Cloud. And it forces me to think, because the previously I thought, okay, I want to start a business, I'm gonna run forever and hand it to my kids. That was like my dream, right? But actually, because the world is changing so fast, that your probability of finding that business that stays around forever is extremely low. Even, like, it's less than 1%, right? Even the 1% that survives, like, you can, if you can hand that off to your kids and your still kids want to run that, that's a completely, so to me, I don't even think about that. It's like, when are the necessary endings? So you should start praying about that even as you're starting. Like, when is my exit plan? There's a couple of things that couple prints of that book talks about, but basically, you're gonna exit that business one way or another, sooner or later. Nobody lives forever, so it's better you think about it and prepare for it than to, like, then you should be forced to make that decision. So, like, focus on your goals. If the business is no longer meeting your goals and your responsibility, for example, I got a guy who wanted to start a YouTube, like, playing video games, right, and recording YouTube, but it couldn't make money. It's like, normally your wife will tell you, like, it's time for you to go get a job.
Yeah.
That was one of my spiritual director. He said, you know, I was like, how do I discern if I should continue a business or should just go get a job? And he's like, your wife will tell you when you need to go get a job. So that's the answer to that. But basically, to discern whether it aligns with your goals, and whether you need to end some of those relationships. That's the other difficult things, is working with people so long that you tend to tolerate some of the relationship that are no longer helping the business reach its goals. So the mission of the business is king, and you need to have necessary endings.
Hey everyone, I'm excited to announce a new initiative from us at Catholic Founders called The Faithful Steward. This is a private newsletter for Catholic investors of all types. How it works is Catholic investors sign up, then as we get word of Catholic-owned organizations that are fundraising, we will send those details to the newsletter subscribers. This is not just for venture-backed startups either. We are not acting as a gatekeeper, just simply a connector, meaning we will not be doing any diligence on these deals. We are simply making sure that the ownership of the companies are reputable Catholic entrepreneurs or founders, and then we will write a simple memo about who they are and what they're up to, and then we'll link their deck or other raising materials in the emails. Anyone receiving them can read and decide to reach out on their own. This way, the investors can remain quiet and anonymous while still getting access to the deals they likely would not have heard about. Please note, the deal types will vary widely, from pure play equity raises to real estate to debt. People building venture scale startups, people building brick and mortar stores, service-based businesses, agencies, you name it. If the ownership is Catholic, we will send it your way. Over time, we hope to have a little bit more infrastructure to segment who gets which deals based on their interest levels and the deal types that they want to see. But for now, since we are not charging anything for this, it will just be a kind of send all type of situation. So if you're a Catholic looking to invest in other Catholic-run businesses, please fill out the sign-up form in the show notes. And if you're a Catholic-run business seeking funding of any type, you can also fill out a separate form for builders to submit your deck. You can go to catholicinvestors.co, that's catholicinvestors.co, to fill out the investor or the builder's form and see a little bit more about what we're doing in writing there. And last thing, please do share this with any other people who are interested, investors or builders, because we will do our best to be the connector of these two types of individuals, but we cannot do all the sourcing. We need your help for that. So share it around with any Catholic investors or Catholic builders that you know of who would be interested in this. All right, without any further delay, let's get back into the episode. I do appreciate the comment about your wife will tell you. I think we've actually had this. It's not we haven't talked about it a lot on the podcast, but it's come up several times that people have mentioned the role of their wife in kind of knowing their calling to begin. I would say
Yes.
for me personally, if it wasn't for my wife's encouragement, I don't think I would have started at the time because she was wise enough to say, "Hey, if you don't do this now, you're gonna regret never trying.
Right.
So you should probably start."
So let me that was a nugget that you dropped that I wanted to expand on. So that she expanded. There's a phrase called the deathbed discernment. So on your deathbed, which one are you gonna regret not making? That's
Mm.
normally that's a good perspective to have.
Yeah. Yeah, some of these things I wonder, it's very challenging. Like I'm in a situation now where there's kind of a discernment about, hey, should I try to go all in on something, or like, well, I'll just be relatively open about it. Like, should I go all in on Catholic Founders, or should I, and at the expense of kind of shutting down or slowing down my other business, or should I go just do as much as I can with both? Because I have one business that provides the income, like my recruitment consultancy. That's how I actually make money. Founders, basically just breaks even effectively, and I put all the money I have back into growing it. And there's no way I could provide for my family at its current income levels. So I'm
Yes.
always like in these discernments, like, okay, is my desire to want to go all in on Catholic Founders in order to quote unquote grow it and make it big and make it to a point where it does make the money? Is that out of a desire for recognition, for impatience? Do I just want to have like the best outcome because it'll be bigger and people will know about it, and then everybody will talk about it? Like, I always have to sort through these feelings because I know I am kind of generally motivated in a lot of ways by recognition, right? It's
Yeah.
something I really want a lot. The
Right.
money is fine, but recognition is really something I think at least I've discerned that I'm generally kind of motivated by. So I'm always trying to sort through this. I don't know if you have anything you want to comment there, or if you can
Yeah.
relate to that in some ways.
So what you just described is basically spiritual discernment. That the with those kind of thought patterns, you can only discern in prayer. Like the desire to grow is a good desire, but it must be tempered by your responsibilities and your other desires. So like in prayer, you ask God, God, am I doing this for my own glory or for my attachment to getting attention, or am I discerning this to glorify you? And through prayer, like you discern that movement of the heart, that okay, if God took away this today, are you going to be okay with that, or are you going to throw a tantrum? And that's normally like that fear. One of my spiritual directors said your fear will determine what you're attached to. So whatever you're most afraid of losing, that's what you're attached to. So that discernment, that's why like I wanted to read Saint Ignatius's quote real quick. All right. I won't read the whole thing, but basically, man is created to praise, adore, and serve God, and by this means his soul. That means that you should not prefer health over sickness, riches rather than poverty, honor rather than dishonor, long life rather than short life, and so all the rest. Desiring and choosing only what is most conducive to the end which we are created, which is to praise, to adore, and to serve God. So all the glory of God. So if God wants you to like that, that's a discernment question. I'm not sure if I. That's a
Yeah.
long route around it.
No, I mean that's fascinating. I think taking the focus off myself a little bit here, I think it's a very interesting question to consider. Part of what I'm trying to do is to inspire Catholics who haven't started a business already to have the, I would say, gumption or the permission to start one.
Yeah.
And I think a part of that is, if what you just said is true, like some people might be afraid of starting a business. And if they are afraid of it, like what's the fear? Does it come from lack of money or lack of stability? Like what
Yeah.
exactly is the fear? And it sounds as though like I could imagine some very easy ways to tie that to lack of trust in God, or lack of trust in, or just really wanting to have money. Like these things, like you might be attached to them even though you're not an entrepreneur. Maybe you're just working a 9 to 5 job, right? Maybe you are more attached to money than an entrepreneur making hundreds of millions of dollars because you're unwilling to take that risk potentially. And I think it's just something to reflect on for anybody who is in that discernment process of, should I start something? Like figure out what exactly am I running from, or what am I afraid of? I like that a lot. I've never heard
Yeah.
it positioned in that way.
The other thing you want to discern is obviously everything's guided by the virtue of prudence, that you don't want to put your family's financial well-being at risk and just go all in with no probability of success or low probability of success. You should be a betting man and bet a little bit at a time until your business is proven and reinforce itself. So there's another framework to choose to know what business or direction to go in is like, what are you most passionate about? That's the number one, right? That's the easy part for you to identify. What are you like one of the best at? Like people say you're really good at that. And then, but the third part is the hard part. Like, what are people willing to pay you for? So those are three circles that have to coincide with each other to be a viable business. If it just doesn't have the money part or one of those, and then it becomes just a hobby and not a viable business.
Yeah, I think that's very important to focus on because we often think that entrepreneurship is this kind of like harebrained scientist, like, oh, I've got an idea, I'm going to go start something, and they go
Right.
crazy. But that doesn't mean that's how it has to be. And I also think that for every story you hear where they sold their house and they burned all their 401k and they just lived on a mattress or slept on the floor or whatever. For every story you hear of success in that way, you probably don't hear a lot more the other way.
99 others who didn't
Yeah.
make it. Yeah.
So we have a selection bias to think that that's the only way I can
Right.
go and succeed at building a business, right?
Right.
There's also plenty of stories of people who built businesses where they didn't go kind of like crazy in that way. They did it in a slow, kind of methodical, mannered way. And we have intellect and reason to think through, okay, what am I going to do? What am I going to
Right.
offer?
Right.
And how much do I have to charge in order to get to my monthly needs so that I'm getting going? And I think that most people can start a simple services business. Most people have at least some skill. And if you don't, there's plenty of services business where it doesn't take a whole lot of skill to learn it really quickly and just to do a good job at it.
Yeah, and the AI just accelerated that. Like it can talk to you through like some of those fears that you have. For example, like your fear of the unknown. Okay, you can talk to it and it'll say, okay, this is what's required as for an entrepreneur. You can do your research and things like that. But ultimately, it does take courage to step out into the deep. Like you needed that push that your wife gave you to start the business, and oftentimes it does require that.
Yeah. And the other the other example I typically give is if you have enough savings, like you can go all in on something, but give yourself a time frame, right? It's like I'm
Right.
gonna go for 6 months at this thing, and if I can't make it work, or if it's clearly not working at 6 months, then I have another 3 months of savings to go out and find another job, basically, right?
Right.
That's
That's part of the
effectively.
necessary ending that you got to plan that before ahead of time.
Exactly. Now, you said something earlier. You said that sometimes you have to part ways with people that, have been with the business for a long time because you said mission is paramount. Can you talk a little bit more about what you mean by that when you say that mission is paramount?
Yeah. So another book that really helped me discern that was Matthew Kelly's Culture is King. So basically, it says the mission of the business supersedes the individual. Like obviously, you don't want to treat people as a means to an end. If your mission, like the people who have been around with you for a long time and they're no longer serving your mission, and businesses grow through different stages and they take different skills. So you may not be the one that leads it to the next. Let's say you have the skills to lead it from one team to 10 team members, 10 employees, but you don't have the skills to run it at 100. Often like those different levels, they require different sets of skills and you don't have those. And you got to be discerning enough to know, okay, this is not my strong point and I need to find somebody else. So part way with yourself, first of all. On the flip side, other people have helped you gotten to that part, but to cordially end that relationship as well, because it's no longer serving them. They're no longer serving the skill set that the business needs. So that's a
Interesting.
difficult decision as a CEO when you get there.
So do you have to make sure that if the people's own objectives, because what I've always found is that if you can align the employee's mission or their own objectives with that of the business in some way, you can kind of keep them going or keep them
Yeah.
motivated. Is that the core thing? Is like if our mission is just completely at odds with what you guys want to achieve, then hey, like unfortunately we're gonna have to part ways in this front. And it's not something that's wrong to do as a business owner to let somebody go because you're specifically like you're working with them in a nice way. You're not just gonna let them go out like that. You're gonna try to
Right.
let them down, etc. Is that what you're saying by that?
Yes. So there's a lot of threads there. I wanted to make sure I don't miss. You are absolutely right. When the mission's no longer so Catholic, his way at work has this thing called the principle subsidiary, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's the principle of the common good, and that's one of the discernment of that is the good of the whole cannot be at odds with the good of the individual. So they must be harmonized. There's always going to be that tension, but you must be harmonized. And you as a CEO, as a leader, not only have the responsibility, but you have the duty to end the relationship early so it doesn't drag out and burn the company to the ground. So I found that was the hardest for me, is letting go of people.
Mhm.
But oftentimes you have to make that necessary decision. You want to do it in a way that honors the relationship, where like they're no longer providing value to the mission of the company, then it's a disservice to them for you to keep them around. It's actually more about you than like your comfort of not having that
Yeah.
hard conversation than it is about them, because they're not going to cut their own, like 90% of the time they're not going to cut their own paycheck. Right. So it's
Yeah.
really your responsibility to say, okay, you're not thriving here. I don't think your gifts are being honored here or being used here well. Let's find you another home that can best use your talent. That's like a honoring the dignity of the human person, and harmonizing with the mission of the company.
Yeah, that's actually a very fascinating way to look at it, is that by not being in this, or by being in the wrong role, you are not glorifying God the way you could. Right? Again,
Right.
whether or not you use that Catholic language or not, it doesn't
Right.
matter. But by having people in the right roles, they can do the things that God is calling them to. So I like
Yes.
that.
Yes, mission is king. What is the mission of the company? Is to
Yeah.
provide services for the customers. And if the person is not having the skill set, it's a disservice to the customers, and the customers will leave you, and eventually the company will go to the ground if you don't end that relationship.
Yeah. Now, can you walk me through? I guess we didn't do this yet, but can you walk us through what's, I guess, the general story of you starting your first business, and then like what are all the businesses that you've had, and just get like the quick history of starting and shutting down businesses, because I'm curious to hear kind of the spectrum of them, if you're willing to share them. Quick question for all the Catholic business owners listening. Are you running your business, or is your business running you through all of the admin tasks that you're doing on a regular basis? We see so many founders doing repeatable administrative tasks, and that's why we started Paraclete VA. We bridge the gap by connecting you with high quality, Catholic, and vetted virtual assistants from all around the world who come from our existing network, so that we know we can trust them. And so can you. Many of our Catholic Founders Guild members have hired through this service and are using this to offload their finance, marketing, administrative, and other busy work, so that they can focus on what really matters and growing their business. It's the stuff that needs to get done but shouldn't be done by you. The cost is simple. Pay $500 on the day the candidate starts, and $500 if you're still happy with them after 30 days. Most hires take less than 10 days to fill. Just email admin@catholicfounders.com with a little bit about what you're looking for. We'll send you some candidates, you do some interviews. Most of the time, you'll have your hire in under 10 days, and this way you can start focusing on what really matters. Stop doing the busy work and start moving the needle.
So my first business really started in sixth grade, where we had a market day, and in middle school, and I made like beads for necklaces and bracelets and sold them. That got me excited a lot more than school. That's why I got the wheels turned. So in college, I went for a computer engineering degree at Georgia Tech, but by the second year, I realized 90% of what I'm learning I'm never going to use again, and that was very discouraging to me. So my friend and I started a car auction business. Like, we bought a car on auction, try to flip it and make a money out of that, but that, we didn't want to go into that. Then when I graduated, I was like, okay, I'm going to work corporate for a few years, save up money, and then start my own business. I don't care what it is. Start my own business. So when I graduated, my dad's like, well, your cousin in California has a successful lawnmower repair business. Why don't you go check it out? So we went, check it out. 2 weeks later, came back. That was 2004. We decided to open a lawnmower repair shop in Roswell. So I've never repaired a mower or anybody before. I've never ran a business before. I thought, okay, I graduated from Georgia Tech. It couldn't be that hard. But it was the hardest thing in my life, because I had to learn a lot of things I didn't know, like how to manage a business. Like, the repairing the mower part was not the hard part. It's the marketing, the expenses, payroll, and all that other stuff that was really hard. And business almost failed. But that was the main business. Then I tried to invest in houses on the side. And that was like 2011. And I did that, bought 2 houses, but didn't work out with a partnership. So that was when Amazon started taking off. So I ended that and just focused on growing Amazon. But then like the 2012 to 2015, like things just kept doubling, and like I was like, man, I'm on top of the world. My CPA was like, man, you're good. You're doubling your revenue every year. I was like, yeah, I know, I'm good. But not not knowing that 2006 competition came in, drove down the margins, and we had a first loss in a long time. So like that kind of that humbled me a lot. And then I was like, man, I don't know if I can depend on Amazon. So I started looking for other ways. So my wife, through all this years trying to turn around, wife started a children's consignment event, which was a franchise. And then like I was like 2 weeks out of the year, 2 weeks. So you did it twice a year, 2 weeks each at a time. It was like 16-hour days. Basically, I was taking time off from my main business to start this business. It was like barely breaking even or losing money. But that wasn't the straw that broke. The straw was like for 2 weeks we didn't really see our children much, and so we decided like our family is the most important. So we ended that. Then I had the opportunity to go to China for sourcing products on Amazon. That's what I wanted to do, but I made the decision not to because we have like young kids ever since we've been married. So that would meant my wife was at home with young kids while I travel a couple weeks, and that was like she wouldn't be able to handle that. So I gave up those opportunities for the family. I tried buying other Amazon businesses online. I tried buying uh, and merging it with my e-commerce business. So 2012, that lawnmower repair business became an e-commerce business because I ordered too much stuff, and long story short, that was a divine wink that like showed me that the Amazon business was the way to go, and that's when the lawnmower repair business added the Amazon e-commerce business, and then I bought Amazon businesses. I bought a SaaS business, which was a hashtag. And then we started a Sylvan tutoring center, which we launched it 2019, September 2019, right before COVID, when basically everything
Yeah.
was shut down and we still had to pay the bills. And so it was like all these difficulties that we had to go through. And then 2022, basically since 2016, when I struggled, I was always looking for a new business to like supplement my income. But I love software because that's my background, but also like the business, e-commerce business, we develop our own programs to run the operations, but I didn't know how to market it. 2023, I bought Seller Labs, which was a software company and so I ran both the e-commerce and the software company at the same time. And this past year, I had to close down the e-commerce business just because it's like no longer profitable and the market has changed. And discerning that there was little hope of turning that around.
Hmm. Yeah.
So that was the kind of the long journey.
The
So
story.
now I have a software business, but it's struggling. I can't provide for my family, so I'm looking for whatever God's leading to me next, whether I can turn the software business around or if anybody's in need of software development or app development, in particular with AI, reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
I mean, I really appreciate you kind of being vulnerable about this and sharing it all because people only usually talk about the successes, right? They're not
Yeah.
willing to talk about the failures. And in your case, like you started things that maybe if you really thought about it more, you may have not started them, but you still started them. You learned things from them, and then you say, hey, like in some cases, family's more important than this business, and maybe it could turn into something, but we're going to shut it down and we're going to follow where God is calling us. And I really appreciate that. I guess you could say total surrender to whatever it is he's calling you
Yeah.
to. It's definitely not easy to do. It's much easier to say than it is
Yes.
to do, right?
You're right.
But throughout all of this, I guess like my biggest question to you is as somebody who is like fully reliant on your own entrepreneurial efforts, like your paycheck comes from your work. How do you think about working hard versus spending time with family? Like you've got a lot of kids. It's hard, I can imagine, to strike that balance of like, listen, I need to provide for us, so I'm gonna go work hard. But
Right.
yet you still want to spend time with your kids because you can never get that back.
Right. Exactly. So that's a good question. So the way that I normally, because an entrepreneur, our temptation is not to sloth, right? But temptation is to overwork.
Hmm.
And so it's actually my wife who helps me draw that boundaries. So when I'm working too late, like it's good to define that hours. Like once you're out of the business, you turn it off. I'm not perfect at it. My mind is still often on the business, but like to put that aside and to spend time with family and kids. But there are times where like right now we're having difficulty, so I'm having to work Saturdays and late nights and stuff like that. But that should not be a long-term plan.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
should try to make it more sustainable.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Even if it means, so one of the things, I went to a silent retreat recently and there's a book called That Man, The Man We Need, or something like that. But it talks about that, like a lot of these things we do, if we don't do it, we're going to end up in a mobile home, right? And the guy was like, spend time with your kids, even if it means you live in a mobile home. I mean, you'll never get those years back. You can always start a business once your kid's out of a house and go off to college. But what helps me is my God first, then my wife, then family, then business, then other relationships. Like having that hierarchy of priorities. Whenever it conflicts, I choose the higher one, and that helps me keep grounded.
Yeah. No, that's really noble. And I am curious on this. It's a similar topic. Is some people are very nervous to have kids when they're not like, oh, the business is not set up and it's not we're not established yet. What is your perspective on this about like the kind of worrying about finances versus trusting in God, and how do you balance that? How do you navigate that? What is your advice effectively?
This is a long topic that I can go into all day. So we actually created a YouTube channel called RaisingGreatSaints.com. And we go into deep about this, but the short answer is that my inspiration, my aunts and uncles on my mom's side. So my grandparents had 8 kids. Like most of them have one, two, three. The one that had the most was five, and he was made fun of quite a bit for having five. But my grandparents had 8 kids, and this was right after the war, and so my grandfather was thrown in prison. She had to, at the time they had 7 kids. She had to raise 7 kids on a economy that's going through a depression and provide for all those families. So I asked my grandmother when she was still alive, like, Grandma, how did you manage through all that? And she said, I trusted in God and took one day at a time, and God provided. It wasn't easy, but God provided. Like to me, that was my inspiration. That we've always wanted a big family, and that like if they can survive after war in Vietnam with her husband being in prison, like then in America we really don't have much to complain about. What, like I said, what's the worst case? You get food stamp and you live in an apartment for a while. Like that humbles you. It's gonna hurt my pride, and like I'm going through that right now, right? And we're living on food stamp right now, but it hurts my pride. But that's just part of the entrepreneur journey, and to have that kids. The back to your original question, that was my inspiration. But the way we look at it, and my wife and I talk about it, is what choices are we going to be glad on our deathbed, that deathbed discernment again. So are we going to be glad we have more kids, or are we going to be glad we have more money? And that's an easy choice, first of all. And second of all, I've seen this through in our family, and I've read it throughout history, even like in the 20s and stuff like that. And Scott Hahn said it like each child brings their own bread. We've seen it repeated over and over again. I've seen it in other big families. They say like every time they have a kid, they get a promotion or something like that. And in my case, whenever Amazon business was growing, we were having kids, and God was providing for us through that.
Yeah. I mean, man, I really appreciate your openness on this, because it is something where we, myself included, I'm not just saying other people, but we really, really don't want we don't like the idea, or even considering the idea that we could be in a situation where we're wanting, right? Like I'm
Right.
so used to the business right now, like it's going well, and I've been in a good job before this too, where like I haven't really had to be super tight on things, especially if I consider how I grew up, right? I grew up in a situation where we were always on food stamps, always in a very tight situation, and I don't want that, right? Like I don't want to have to go back to that. I'm largely probably driven to work so hard because I'm afraid of that, right?
Right.
But it is possible that that is what God is calling us to enter
Exactly.
into, because he knows what is good for us, to help us rid ourselves of attachment to this world, so that
Exactly.
we can desire him above all things. And it's very challenging. I would just encourage anybody listening to put themselves in the shoes. Like, maybe your business is going through a challenge. Don't give up, right? Focus on what exactly it is God's trying to teach you through this,
Right.
and trust in him. Take one step at a time, one day at a time.
and I
It's
wanted
not sexy, but it is, it's what we have to do.
and I wanted to speak on your thank you for sharing about your past growing up, in poverty. Like I grew up in poverty in Vietnam, right? Like we didn't even have electricity. We didn't have electricity when it wasn't until like the late 80s when we finally had a few hours electricity at night where we can watch TV. And we were actually more wealthy there, I would say, relationship wise. We had relationships. We had people that whereas in America, we have a lot of physical, like financial wealth, but we have poverty in relationship wealth. So, like all those lessons that growing up difficulty, like that form you, that gave you the drive to work hard. Whereas, like, I don't know how to teach that to my kids. Hey, they've never had to live through that. So, like me going through this difficult time, I'm telling them about it, and I pray that God uses it to teach them, to form them, to take those lessons with them for the rest of their life, so that like God can take anything that you go through and make a greater good out of it.
Yeah. No, I think that's really, really powerful. The emotional wealth. We don't focus on these things too, where we're so used to, you hear these stats where it's like, oh, the cost of raising a kid is X dollars per year or whatever.
Right,
And for anybody who has a big family, they know that's complete nonsense numbers. Like
right,
nobody pays that much, right? Like I grew up around families making, 60,000 a year or less with 8 kids in the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin, and they find a way to make work. They're not, they're not living large by any means, but they still show up to church on Sundays with, well dressed and very respectful. So I think that our expectation of what is the base reality is extremely inflated, especially for you. You definitely remember. I'm assuming you remember kind of like what it was like
I remember.
in Vietnam. So you remember all these things, and then you think, okay, well, I've been through it before. I can achieve it. But because we're not used to that, we're not used to being in tough circumstances. We're not used to seeing those situations. We don't think it's possible for us to go through it, and we just can't even fathom what it would be like.
I mean, like obviously, it's painful for me to think to have to go back to that, right? But my inspiration again is to my grandparents. Like they went through that. Like God got them through, and then they have 8 kids. Like if they made the choice to say, okay, it's the middle of the war, we're just gonna have like 3 kids, right? Then that like I would be missing out on all the cousins and like all the aunts and uncles that would never come to be because they chose not to cooperate with God to bring more life into the world.
Yeah.
So that's the way I look at it.
Ready to do business with people who actually share your faith? Join the Catholic Founders Guild today. For just $100 a year, you get access to our membership directory, expert-led monthly calls, and a network of potential investors and partners. There's no heavy time commitment, just a shared belief that we are all called to be instruments of God's will in the world, and not our own. Upgrade your subscription at CatholicFounders.com/subscribe. I'm confident in saying it's the best $10 a month you'll ever spend on your business. See you in the Guild. Yeah, this is back to the thing you mentioned earlier, the deathbed, what'd you say? You called it
That's
deathbed
discernment.
discernment, right?
Yeah.
Is if you're somebody who doesn't yet have kids, because, once you have one child, you understand the joy of a child. But if
Yes.
you don't have any kids yet, just ask people who do have kids if they regret having lots of kids or
Right.
if they wish they had more kids.
Right.
I'm pretty sure you'll get a very consistent answer that people would always rather have kids. So look at people who've been through the ringer, right? Don't just rely on your own knowledge, because as we're young, I always reflect on this now. Like I know that I was extremely arrogant when I was young, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I know all this stuff." And then you learn, you get
All of
smacked,
us
you
are.
kind of get your wings clipped all the time. Then then I got older. I was like, "Oh, I got good at my career." I was like, "No, no, no, no. I know what I'm doing." Again, like you think, I don't know what I'm doing. And then when you're getting married, I was like, I'm the oldest of 8 kids. Like I'm not worried about parenting. Like that'll be fine, right? And then you go into it, and then you again, God just like you don't get it, right? Do you? You're constantly going to be experiencing things that you think you know all about, but you literally have not lived through it. So you
Right.
cannot know. You can hear from others and understand to an extent, but you'll never truly understand until you've personally gone through it.
Yep. That's right.
Yeah.
And
Now I'd like to ask.
don't let the fear hold you back into becoming the best version of yourself.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah. Now I want to ask, we've talked about some of these things, but broadly speaking, what would you say are the biggest lessons that you've personally, spiritual lessons, like the way that God has brought you closer to Him through business?
My first business, like I'm an introvert by nature, right? I like to sit and think. So my first business was a lawnmower repair shop. It required me to talk to the customers. to handle customer service, to sell the lawnmowers, the lawnmower parts. Like that helped me form me to learn to articulate myself, but also the sales process and marketing and operations and finances. So all these things that God teach me, those are skill sets that come over time. But for me as a virtue, as a person too, that translate to me being able to go out and evangelize better because like now I know how to talk to people and learn to communicate better and also learn to work out conflicts and de-escalate when the customers, their mower, you fix it and it's not working again and the grass in their yard is growing. Like you got to learn to just de-escalate. Like that
Mm-hmm.
comes in really handy, especially with your wife. It's not always successful, but learning to de-escalate that way, right? Sometimes it just requires walking away. So some of those virtues, but also like I had like God gave me this like love, I would say like attachment. Outside of my family, I love God and I'm really attached to money in that order though. So like God had to kind of over the business years to pry that attachment out of my heart and he's still
Mm-hmm.
working on it, right? So those are a couple of things that God helped me for my, and then obviously to learn to trust that ultimately it's like I have learned to give God my businesses and if he chooses to close this then that's his business. It's not always easy to say that, easy to say but not not easy when you're going through it, right? But it's ultimately it's his business. If he wants to succeed he'll succeed, if he doesn't then he'll close it. He has a different path for you.
Yeah. Now, I do find the idea of our businesses and our entrepreneurship journey as teachers for us very fascinating
Yes.
because if you are called to be an entrepreneur, again, we never can fully understand these and comprehend these things, but we know that God is calling us and kind of guiding us each in a very particular way that is specifically what is best for us. Like we
Yes.
know that he has our best interest in mind, meaning he doesn't allow anything to come our way unless it is for our benefit. We just have to
That's
see
right.
it that way and
Right.
accept it, right? And if you're called to be an entrepreneur, it's almost as if God is saying, "You're very stubborn, so I'm going to make you do this very challenging life of entrepreneurship
Right.
so that I can teach you." But we should keep in mind that that means we have to, if we are called this entrepreneurship journey, like anybody who's listening who's an entrepreneur, we should probably spend a lot of extra time considering and reflecting on what is God trying to teach me through this, because we could
That's
just be
right.
so stubborn and continue to rely on our own thought process or situation where we like, no, 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 dig our heels in it, do it our way.
One of the biggest unlock I got that I wish I knew earlier when starting this journey was God made us all different, right? There's three sides of a business. There's the finance, there's the operations, there's marketing. And we're only good at one. The other two, it's just a different wiring. If we're wired for marketing, we're not wired for operations and finances. Like you still need to do them, just but you're not good at. So that God made it that way so that we are forced to rely on other people to so that we can complement one another. The other thing that is a big unlock is I wish I would have joined a mastermind as soon as possible. I didn't join one until 2018ish, and that was the biggest, like I would say, several PhD worth of business information and growth that I've had when I joined that mastermind group, just because I learned from other people's experience and they point out the failures and the weaknesses that I have that you don't see otherwise. So that was probably one of the biggest unlock is to join a business group, one that is not only just like a networking business, but like going deep into a mastermind where they know your business, they know your weaknesses, and it's the same problem. You've had this employee problem for multiple times. You brought it up multiple times. Why haven't you done anything about it? That kind of deal.
Yeah. Well, I didn't tell everybody. I didn't tell him to talk about this beforehand, but that's my pitch to join Catholic Founders, guys. Okay, jump in and get part of our Catholic Founders group. But
Is it a mastermind group as well?
it's not necessarily structured perfectly like a mastermind, but we have a group of people and we're constantly facilitating questions to join and with other Catholic entrepreneurs and figure out like how to work through your business problems. So
You should do a community, online community or something, and that can
yeah,
lead to a mastermind later.
we do have the online community. We're working on setting it up in that kind of like
That's awesome.
mastermind format. But no, this is really good. I think we're already out of time today. I can't believe how fast the time has gone. But let's wrap up with a couple core things around. There's a couple rapid fire items. So, what is your favorite scripture?
The Jesus prayer, Jesus, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. Like
Okay, amazing. That's a good one. I always forget that one. I'll just have to say it in my own version because Alessandro DeSanto taught me that when he first came out of the pod, and I need to I need to recall that one. Who is your favorite entrepreneur?
Like secular entrepreneur,
Anybody?
I would say some between Steve Jobs and Elon Musk.
Yeah. Why do you, just out of curiosity, like what's the core like reason why you are drawn to those?
Like Steve Jobs, I really like because he got kicked out of his own company. He got humbled. He knew like that humbling experience helped him humble him and help him learn the skills needed to run Apple to make great
Later
where it
on.
was. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, that's actually I didn't necessarily think about it in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's definitely, these guys are not definitely not perfect men, but they have some great entrepreneur skills that
Yeah.
you read their biography, it's
Yeah.
really awesome.
Yeah. Who is your favorite saint?
Saint Maximilian Kolbe, I would call him one of the best entrepreneur in the church.
Yeah. I always forget about the fact that he built what was it, the largest like media empire
Yeah,
basically at the
yeah,
time.
pretty
Yeah.
much.
It's really cool. And then what is your favorite devotion?
The Rosary,
Nice.
easy to learn, but a lifetime to master.
Wow. I like that. I gotta clip that for sure. My friend TK Coleman he'll appreciate that.
Yeah,
Cool, man. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. This has been a pleasure to learn
I enjoyed it.
from your insights. Any last like calls to actions or requests of our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, like I think the AI revolution is happening. We need more entrepreneurs than ever. And even if you're at a job, like the job market is uncertain as ever, but just because the revolution is happening so fast that you need to be planting seeds for your next venture, even if you're successful today. So do it, and then obviously, like if you need software development or AI, I'd love again contact me and we can chat about it.
Yeah. If you guys need a cracked engineer to help you with your next project, reach out to Nhan
Yeah.
for sure. So
Yep.
awesome, man. Thank you so much for coming on. God bless you on all the things you're doing. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. As you go back to your days, I encourage you to consider just a couple things from this discussion. First of all, is God calling you to end the chapter of one of your ventures, like to end the chapter of the business you're in or one of the businesses you're running? It's not a question that any of us really wants to think about, but if you have had this kind of persistent feeling, especially in moments of quiet and calm, not in the chaotic ones where you just lost a customer, but if you had these thoughts in the quiet and calmness of your heart, it might be a sign that God wants you to make space for something else. Again, that could just be simply space for your family. It could be space for another venture. It's really hard to tell. But listen to that tug at the silence of your heart. If you have a well-formed conscience, you can trust that the thing that kind of nags at you when you're in peace is something to pay attention to. Secondly, what is your attachment to money, recognition, earthly success in general? Imagine yourself in a very challenging place financially. You're on food stamps, your finances are uncertain, maybe you have to downgrade and sell your house and move into an apartment. Just imagine in that moment, do you still praise God? Do you still acknowledge that he is a good God? Do you accept and embrace the situation that he has put you in? I think for most of us, the answer it would be very hard to answer in the affirmative. So let us pray for the grace to accept whatever, and I really mean that, whatever it is that God is calling us or God is sending us. Let us pray for the grace to accept that because we know that he has our ultimate good. He has our eternity in mind. And he doesn't send us things unless it's for our benefit. All we have to do is enter into it and allow it to transform us. Nan talks specifically about the fact that business, in his case, has been a way to help purify him from the love of money. So it's a very interesting perspective. But I do have a favor to ask for you. Please, if you enjoy this content, share this podcast or the newsletter itself with your friends. We are also on YouTube, so go subscribe there, and then you can check out our content there as well. We don't necessarily need to go viral, but we would love to be able to get more people aware of this and just help this teach the algorithms to send our stuff to other people. Finally, if you're looking to start a business and want to be surrounded by other Catholics as you get off the ground, consider joining the Catholic Founders Guild. We've recently announced that we are going to be diving deeper on helping people refine their ideas, create an offer, and get off the ground and get to their first $1.5 million in sales. That's kind of our key focus. So we're going to do all this while helping you keep your Catholic faith fully integrated into that process. Again, This goes back to the idea we're trying to become saints because of our businesses rather than in spite of them. There's a sort of harmony there. It doesn't have to be in conflict. So if you'd like help as you embark on this journey, do reach out to our team at admin@catholicfounders.com and we can set up a call. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, don't forget that you were created to create. See you next time on Catholic Founders.